Forget hot girl summer. This is a short story summer. I am on a quest to find short stories, short story collections, short story anthologies, short story magazines. I'm hoping to specifically find short stories in the mystery genre. I don't know if it's because it's summer and I am wanting to be outside a lot more, or if this is just my natural creative flow. I don't really feel like writing a novel right now. I don't really feel like working on a novel. I don't feel like giving that kind of time and attention to a project that big. But I do want to continue to be creative and write stories and explore new ideas. So this summer I feel like is short story summer for me. I used to write short stories a lot when I was first getting started as a writer. I found them to be nice to work on between longer projects, but it has been quite a while since I've written short stories. I did just finish one recently, but I've just been kind of dabbling again. Something about the short length of them, the way that I can kind of move from idea to idea and try out different things and experiment with different storytelling techniques is really calling to me right now. But because it's been so long since I have worked on a short story, since I've read short stories, I want to use this video as an opportunity to experiment, to explore the short story genre a little bit more, especially mystery and suspense short stories. I have read a lot of literary short stories. I've written a lot of more literary or speculative fiction short stories, but I haven't really dived into mystery short stories. Those just seem very difficult to write. How do you plot out a mystery in 5,000 words? So I am very intrigued by this. So I am headed to Powell's to try and find mystery short stories. And then I'm going to read as many as possible, see how those writers are doing it, and see if it sparks any new ideas for me. Back home from Powell's, and as always when I go to Powell's I buy way too much. I went in looking for short story collections. I wanted to look for anthologies for books that had multiple authors with multiple different types of short stories. I was hoping to find ones that were kind of mystery themed. I did find 4 books that I'm very excited about. Let me show you what I got from Powell's. So we also got some accoutrements, some not short story collections, because I could not say no to this adorable kitty cats eating ramen notebook. No, I did not need a new notebook, but here we are with a new notebook. Make yourself happy. I also couldn't say no to what is claiming to be the world's softest sock, like walking on clouds. I would love to walk on clouds. These colors cute though. Then I got this tiny little book, One Line a Day. Looks very fancy. A long time ago, a dear friend of mine told me about this journal that she was keeping where she wrote 1 line a day, and it goes over the course of 5 years. And so in theory, if you write 1 line a day, if you actually fill the book out, then as the years pass, you can look back and see what you were doing 3, 4, 5 years ago. I love the concept. This is such a pretty cover. I love the gold emboss, and I love the size of it, that I can kind of carry this around with me in my purse. Today I might write about how I went to Powell's, or maybe that I went to brunch with a friend, or maybe it will be something else that hasn't happened yet. Maybe it'll be partly a gratitude journal. I don't know. There's so many possibilities with this book. But now let's talk about the short story collections that I got, because I am very excited about them. I got Never Whistle at Night. Never Whistle at Night. This is a collection of indigenous dark fiction. As I was looking through the shelves and through the anthology sections, I kind of had this idea that maybe mystery short stories aren't as popular as I thought, or maybe they are just kind of tucked away in other places, not necessarily listed as a mystery story. And so I'm kind of broadening my idea of what I want to do with my own potential collection. And I'm thinking broadening it to maybe more crime, literary, mystery. I really want to focus on the cozier aspect of mystery novels, on the cozier aspect of short stories. But I could not resist this cover. I've heard really good things about the stories in this book, and I do love reading dark fiction. And so even if I don't end up writing a dark fiction collection, I think I could still learn a lot from the short stories in this book. And if I don't learn anything, hopefully I'll just at least have a good time reading them. I also picked out a very classic, like the best short stories collection. This is the O. Henry Prize winners from 2023. This was edited and put together by Lauren Groff of Fates and Furies fame, along with other wonderful books. This is definitely going to be more literary style of short stories, but I am hoping again to find some recurring themes or recurring structure, some recurring elements that I can study and put into practice. Then I did find 2 mystery-specific books. One is The Best American Mystery and Suspense, put together by Jess Walter. These are just stories that are taken from literary magazines and other collections and anthologies considered the best by whoever is putting the collection together. Seattle Noir is part of the Noir series. I think it started with like Baltimore Noir, and it's just crime and mystery short stories that are set in a specific place. I was torn between getting Montana Noir and Seattle Noir, and I went with Seattle. So I may have to go back for the Montana one, depending on how I like this one. These are both mystery-focused short story collections, and so these I'm going to be studying up pretty well on, reading through them, see if I can glean any tidbits, hot tips, hot writing tips for how to write a mystery short story. It was a very productive trip to Powell's. I'm looking forward to reading through some of these short stories, kind of seeing what I can learn from them, what the takeaways are in terms of themes, elements, structure, style, prose, characterization, anything that I could take away as like how to write a short story. Step 1, write the first sentence. Okay, but what kind of first sentence do we want? You know, there's a lot to think about. This may just be a very creative form of procrastination. It is possible that I should just sit down and start writing, but again, it's summer. I don't know. Let's try something new. This is what I'm hoping will happen, that as I read through these, I will start to feel inspired and will start to like come up with ideas and of my own and start to write it all down and kind of feel the need to start writing. So in the back of my head, I have a little short story collection idea burning away. Burning, it's not burning yet, it's smoldering. There are a couple of collection ideas smoldering where I have like a theme, a central unifying theme, and I kind of want to write the short stories around this. Then I'm also kind of thinking that I may want to submit short stories again to anthologies, to literary journals. I don't know if that will happen. I may just end up publishing them myself on my own newsletter. But for now, this week, the entire experiment is read as many short stories as possible and try to crack the code of how to write a compelling short story. The first key element that I'm noticing, kind of the similar thing between all of these stories, is that the reader is being dropped into the action, into the world, in the middle of everything. The short stories are feeling very much like they are a small part of a very big world. The characters usually have a lot of complex things going on, and so much is said within a short span of time, but I really am left with the feeling that the short story is only a small moment in this character's life. And I know that with novels, that is kind of a similar thing that you're trying to do. You're trying to jump into the action right in the middle of things. You want the character to feel like they had a before. You want the character to have backstory and complications and hint at things to come or things that have happened. But I think what is different with short stories is that you do not always get that backstory and that future resolution. You just kind of have this sensation that you are plopped right into the middle of this moment, and you will only get to know what you need to know for the short story. There is a lot of world building that is happening that you aren't necessarily privy to, but you just get hints throughout the short story. I think for a short story to be successful, it does have to feel like a smaller part of something greater. I don't know that I have read a lot of short stories that have been fully encapsulated into beginning, middle, end. They always have felt like a part of something bigger, a part of something more extravagant, a part of something more complicated. So that, I think, is the first key element into writing a successful short story, is to know enough about your character and your world, to know all the backstory, to know things that your reader doesn't know, so that you can drop in these hints throughout the 3,000, 5,000, 6,000 words that you're working on. Drop in these hints that will make the short story feel like it is part of something bigger. The second key element to writing a short story. When approaching a short story, unlike with a novel where you have all this time to kind of explore and expand on one person's life or a certain element in their life, with a short story, it's short. You want it to pop, you want it to be snappy, you want it to immediately draw the reader in. And so for that reason, one of the key elements that I'm noticing in all the short stories I'm reading is this idea of building up the story around a very strong concept, around a strong hook. Something unexpected, a big what if moment. Something out of the ordinary that people aren't used to seeing in stories. Certainly we see this a lot in like more speculative fantasy type short stories, science fiction, where you are able to really twist the world and really pull the reader out of the ordinary. But it can be used for mystery short stories or more literary short stories as well. Some of the concepts that I have been seeing in the short stories I have been reading are things like using the red tide as a murder weapon, a mountain built of men just rising from the ground. A man mountain. A woman on a train who is harassed by a man, and the tension just builds from each stop as she is going from one place to another. And while the woman on a train thing isn't necessarily the most unique idea, I think the way that the writer ended up building tension in that story is pretty unique. Whatever kind of concept you're developing, you definitely just want to have it be unsettling. You want your character to feel tension. You want your reader to feel tension and to be drawn forward into the story to something that will have them saying, oh, that's really interesting or strange or unsettling, and I really want to read more. Tip number 3 is going to be to just jump right into the action. Jump straight in. Dive headfirst. Do not lead the reader through a long series of uninteresting, unimportant things. Drag them in by their collar. Throw them in headfirst. One thing I was noticing in the short stories I was reading was a shift in the status quo by the end of the first or second page. There is not a lot of time given to build up, given to what was happening before, given to the character's life before the story starts. The best short stories just throw the reader in head first and let them work out throughout the length of the short story what the heck is happening. Very quickly, early on in a short story, you want the reader to know that something is different, that things are not the same as they were before. You don't necessarily have to hold our hand and walk us through all the details. We definitely should be getting this feeling that something big is coming, that something big is going to be happening. The fourth key element of a strong short story that feels almost as important as the big hook is to have a big twist ending. Or a small twist end. To have an unresolved story question. Leave the reader wanting more. Leave the reader to fill in the blanks. This is not something that you see very often in novels, and in fact when you do see it, you often see readers coming in with kind of negative reviews about that book. I think when a reader picks up a novel, they're wanting to feel the entirety of a story from beginning to end. They want threads tied up. But when a person is coming to a short story, at least when I'm coming to a short story, that is not what I am expecting most of the time. I am generally prepared to be kind of left with a question mark at the end. In fact, I prefer it. And a lot of the stories that I was reading as I was researching how to work on my own, they did just that. They had a big, medium, little, the size of it doesn't matter. They all had kind of a twist at the end, kind of a little bit of a gotcha moment, a moment where you're like, oh no, just a big question mark at the end. But many of them just ended on a cliffhanger. And I think that works really well because I think a good short story is one that you are thinking about long after it's over. I think it's one that you want to talk about, one that you want to share with other people and say, you read this and tell me what you think and let's talk about that ending. Kind of echoing back to the first key element where you want to feel like you're dropped into the middle of an already formed story, dropped right into the middle of something important. When it comes to the end of a short story, you want to feel like you've been yanked out too soon. To feel like the story and the characters carry on long after you've stopped reading. I am sure that there are other key elements to writing a short story that I am missing in this video that I skipped over. If you are a short story writer and you have some tricks and tips, if you have any key elements that you'd like to share with the community, please leave them in the comments. I am still experimenting and learning how to write better short stories. With the short stories I've been working on this summer, I have found that it has been easier for me to work on them and finish them if I already know what the ending is going to be. So if I were to leave you with one thing at the end of this video, just kind of one tip to get you started, if you are interested in starting to write short stories, if you're coming back to writing short stories after some time away, the thing that seemed to work best for me as I was kind of returning to the short story world was to start from the beginning. And I don't always give this advice because I don't always think it's good, especially in terms of like novel arcs and deeper character plots. But in terms of short stories, it really helped me to know where I was going before I figured out where I was gonna start. Figure out what that twist would look like at the end of your story and work backward and see if that helps you find the narrative structure for the short story that will work best. Let me know in the comments if you're working on any short stories this summer. I am working on my third short story this summer. I think it will probably be my last before I move back to novel writing, but I have been having a really good time rediscovering the world of short stories, the subtle differences between writing a short story and writing a novel, but how the skills that I learned from writing and reading short stories can translate into better, stronger novel writing. Thanks for watching. I hope you found something useful in this video, and I will see you next time.